Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar. My name is Marianne Monteleone, Vice President of Professional Development for the Long Island Board of Realtors. We have a very special program today. We have a lot of webinar listeners and viewers today because of our guest, Christina Matheson, on solar and what to know when considering it for your home. And as realtors, we certainly need to know how to handle solar within a home that we may be listing or we may be selling. So let me formally introduce Christina and then turn it over to her. Christina Matheson is a results-oriented business strategist and lifelong entrepreneur who proudly encourages those around her to dream big and motivated by an unwavering social responsibility. Christina's Becoming a Solar Specialist program was the first of its kind to educate on residential solar power and energy efficiency and how these upgrades affect a real estate transaction. Christina serves as Realtor Success Specialist with RCG Mortgage, helping to train and coach their realtor partners to higher levels of success. In chatting with her before going live with the webinar, she has said that she was a solar panel specialist and realtor, and she combines both passions to bring this information to you. So we give a warm welcome and we turn it over to Christina.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I so appreciate the opportunity. About 7 or 8 years ago, I saw that there would be a problem coming down the line, and that was that there were times that there is a UCC filing or a lien on a property that has solar, and it creates a little bit of havoc if we don't know how to deal with it. So I left my solar position, started to train realtors, and what ended up happening was that they trained me. So let's get into it. I want to share just a little bit about share button. So this is who I am. I'm known as the Solar Lady of Real Estate. It's a very unique spot that I'm in. I've been in the solar world for over 13 years. On the real estate side for about 5 or 6. I'm a NAR Green designee. And I was very honored to win the Evergreen Award from NAR in 2019. So I do a lot of other really cool things. Leadership and coaching are a big part of what I do, but my passion is really this solar real estate course. So we're going to just go through a small piece of it, just the general solar information. I know, Marianne, we spoke a while, earlier about making this a full-on CE course. So if everybody's got more questions, we'll certainly entertain them, but look forward to the full, 3.5 hours. So let's get into it. I was featured in The Real Deal because I'm the only crazy lunatic that does this, and I love it. So what we're going to talk about is why everybody goes solar, what the big picture is, what matters when you're going solar, who owns it, and the key to handling a transaction involving solar panels. We're going to review and discuss tax credits, rebates, incentives, and abatements. And I'd love to take your questions as we go. So there are a lot of us here. I know the LIBOR team is going to help manage the questions in the chat. So let's go. This was put up on our platform, right, on MLS in 2017. Licensees must disclose to potential buyers on homes which have solar panels whether the homeowner owns or leases the solar panels on the house. It's a material fact, right? So all of this is not anything new to us. I think the new thing is that there is so much solar now, it's affecting so many more transactions. And some people have called it a deal killer. The only reason that solar is a deal killer is because we were never trained on how to handle it and what to do beforehand, as opposed to, being reactive. It's gotten to the point where there are many homes that have solar, and there are such unique things to a transaction that has solar in it. Why people do this is very simple. We all use electricity, and every time I teach a live class, I ask by a show of hands, who plans on using electricity in the next 5 years, right? We all do. Anybody that's got a number of people in their home knows that everything plugs in now, every device, everything. it used to be for what they called the tree huggers, that people who were just cared about the green of the earth. But it's also for people that care about the green of the dollar. We're creating energy on our rooftop that is the same electricity as we buy from the utility. The main reason people are doing this now, so the green of the earth is a benefit, but the green of the dollar is really it. So this is an example PSEG bill. For people that used to pay $200, $300, $400 a month, they're getting these really super low bills because they're making their own energy. I'm going to try to go through this kind of quickly. We have a lot of slides and I want to touch on as much as possible. The way this works is the solar panels, whether they're on the roof or on the ground. So on Long Island, Queens, we always have them on the roof. It's very rare. If you go out east or upstate, you'll see that people have solar panels on the ground. That's because they have the space for it. So those panels are making electricity in the DC or direct current form. The wiring goes to an inverter, usually on the side of the house, in the basement somewhere, and it swaps that current from DC, direct current, to AC, alternating current, which is what we use in our house. Now, whatever it is that we're using, a smart meter or our electric meter will be changed. So right now, when people don't have solar, they have the meter with that little handle that spins around. And sometimes when we're using a lot of electricity, say on a very, very hot summer day, when everybody comes home from work and school, 5:30, 6 o'clock, that needle is usually spinning like crazy. When you go solar, your solar system is producing that energy. Your home and your main service panel is using the energy as it's produced, and anything extra is sent back out to the grid. So we use it first, and whatever we don't use, it goes out to the grid, to the utility, gets shared with everyone else. At night, there is no sun. We're not making any power, so we're using that utility energy. No one ever that's in a utility like we are. If you live in the middle of nowhere, people have solar with batteries, they store it in the house. We still have that option. It's still pretty expensive. For the most part, everyone in our market stays connected to the utility, and it's called net metering. It's almost like an energy checking account where I'm producing this energy during the day when the sun is shining, and at night when the sun is not shining, I'm using the energy from the utility. So it's a give and take, and almost like the old rollover minutes for the phone. So you're using the same energy credits. The utility very kindly keeps track of this, how much we produce, how much we consume, and you are not charged taxes or delivery. Believe it or not, they charge us delivery on electricity, which I always found kind of silly. Like, I can't pick it up in a bucket, right? So how could you charge me to deliver it? So it's the same exact electricity. We've just produced it locally. The utility doesn't have to pay to transport it or anything else, and it's considerably less expensive, and it's cleaner. People always ask, oh, well, I have a 2,000 square foot house. How much will my solar cost? It's different for everybody. And the reason is there are a lot of factors that sizing a solar system is dependent upon. One is annual household usage. If we have two identical houses next to each other, and one has two older people that don't have a lot of things plugged in, and they're just, conservative with how much electricity they're using, they're going to need a considerably smaller system than a house like mine when my kids were all home that was constantly buzzing. Kids were plugging things in. We had fish tanks, we had a hot tub, we have all these things that consume electricity. So you can't really tell. So annual household usage will dictate the number of solar panels that you'll need on the house, hopefully to let you produce as much energy, almost as much as you use on an annual basis. The next is roof space. You'll find that many properties, in Queens or high-rise properties, they have a very small roof space. So they can't produce as much as our homes on Long Island that have much more roof space. So roof space is definitely a consideration. Shade or sun. We have the beauty of many trees on Long Island. If we have trees covering the roof, the sun is the fuel for those panels. If the sun can't get to the panels, no matter how much you pay for them, they're not going to make energy. So sun or shade is a big factor in it. And then again, roof pitch and orientation. We have many homes on Long Island. So if you think about a house with a Tudor roof, right? It's got a very narrow pitch. So when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, if the sun is on this side, these panels are not going to be working, and vice versa. If you have a house with a pitch like this, the sun will get to those panels much more. And finally, the power of each solar panel. So older panels will produce a little bit less, newer panels will produce a little bit more. You can buy panels from 300 watts to over 400 watts. But you need, it's not something that you absolutely want to venture into all by yourself. The big picture is, as real estate salespeople, where do we start? How do we start to know about this? With a lender, there is something called subordination and language that Fannie Mae teaches us. Finally, they've come out with guidance on it, but there was a lot of confusion for a very long time. For appraisers, there are very few appraisers qualified or trained to appraise green or solar panel and energy efficiency. So, do solar panels increase property value? And we'll get into that briefly. On title, if there is a UCC filing on a title, it's a lien, and that lien has to be removed. So there's a process in transferring that property. Attorney's concern is always, for their client, how are they best being represented? Because this is a consideration when we're transferring a solar powered home, when we're transferring the ownership. Insurance, do we have to include solar in our homeowner's policy? And the answer is absolutely yes. And the big one, what if my solar is not installed properly? So I'm going to try to quickly, you can see there's a lot here, so I'm going to try to quickly go through them. But I'm looking forward to giving more details in a longer class. So there's no problems with the actual solar power. We know at this point in time that solar energy makes the same electricity that our PSEG utility makes. The question is, how was it financed and was it installed properly? So we want to represent our buyers and sellers, whoever our clients or customers are, in the best possible way. There are 3 current ways, other than cash, right, that you can go solar. There are 3 methods. Number 1 is a solar lease. I'm going to go through this with all of the detail on the slide. You pay a fixed monthly bill for the rental of the equipment. It's usually a 20-year term, and payments usually go up every year. The common number is 2.9% a year. So you can imagine the payments over 20 years are going to go up quite a bit. A PPA, or power purchase agreement, you pay for every kilowatt hour of energy you use. So let me stop with the kilowatt hours and let me tell you how we're going to talk about this moving forward. This cup, everybody loves 7-Eleven. This is a 24-ounce cup. I need 24 ounces of energy to power my house. Forget about kilowatt hours, right? I need 24 ounces. If the solar can make 20 ounces of energy for me, I'm going to save a ton of money because I'm only paying the taxes and the delivery and all of the other surcharges from the utility on this little bit. So forget about kilowatt hours. We're going to call it ounces from now on. I know about kilowatt hours. If you want to know more about it, you can absolutely ask, but we're going to call it ounces for a minute. So you pay for every ounce of energy you use. It's usually a 20-year term, and payments always go up every year. Part of the concern with the power purchase agreement is that oftentimes homeowners say, oh no, it's not a lease, because that's what they were told by their salesperson. But what they don't realize is that they don't own it. So they assume because it's not a lease, they think that they own it. So oftentimes homeowners don't have the full story on it. They just know that it's on the house. Or you can buy the solar. So you can finance it, or you could purchase it outright with the money under the mattress. The power produced by your system is yours. There are no monthly payments unless you finance it. So it's just finance payments. And those go away at the end of the term of your choice. So what you can compare this to is renting versus having a mortgage that one day the American dream will come true and you will own that property. So those are the three ways that people usually go solar. Now, the problem lies in who owns the solar, and we have to know that as realtors. We have to know that on who we represent. This is really just, I think, the most informative slide, and it's something that, you know, you may want to take a screenshot of. If you're representing a buyer, you want to get a copy of the contract your client is considering assuming. I have to implore you. So we in real estate know that everything is about rules and regulations and compliance and fair housing and being transparent and disclosure. The solar industry is new. A solar salesperson is not licensed. They may sometimes have a home improvement contractor license. There is no school to become a solar salesperson. There is nothing stopping those solar salespeople from adding to their commission. And no two contracts are ever the same. So when we say to get a copy of the contract, you actually have to read it because the terms may be completely different from one to the next. I know that's a little daunting, but it's the truth. As having to be able to share and understand the material facts of a property, this is part of the material facts. So we have to determine who owns the solar. If it is a lease or a power purchase agreement, the bank owns the solar. If it is owned and there is no UCC filing, so even if it's financed, as long as there's no UCC filing, that homeowner owns the solar. We want to determine right away. So if you're going to take a listing with a house that has solar on it, you want to really know from the get-go. You want to get a copy of that homeowner's documents with the solar company. You want to find out who owns it, what the transfer process is, what it is that they need. Some solar, they say, is perfectly transferable. Some say, well, you know, if you transfer it, we have the right to change the interest rate on your lease or on your power purchase agreement, which in this environment, we certainly don't want. Everybody's stuff is different. And there is no rhyme or reason. And I'm sorry, but it's just the way that it is. We have to really dig in. You want to request a preliminary lien search on that property. So you want to ask your friends in the title business to just take a look and see if there is a lien on this property. You want to request the details on the warranty for this system. So you'll determine that by whoever owns the solar, wherever your homeowner purchased or leased it from. You want to request something called a PV value report. We'll get into that at a later date. You want to assume that the sellers, the lenders, and the attorneys are uneducated because you must do your homework. This is all about us having a license from the state of New York and us upholding not only the licensing requirements, but the NAR Code of Ethics. So there is a lot here. I see that we have some questions. I'm going to kind of jump. If you're leasing the equipment, what happens after the 20-year term ends? Peter asks. That's a great question. When leasing first came out, we just assumed that after the 20 years, that it would be just fine and they'd leave it, and that's not the case. So every case is different. Some have you buy it out. Some have you get into, you know, you can have it removed, but some of the language I've seen is, but the roof will be restored to watertight condition. And what that can mean is that all of the penetration, so they're drilling this solar into the rafters of the roof. If they remove the solar and they restore it to watertight condition, it can mean that they're going to put some kind of epoxy in these former holes that were sealed. And it may be watertight, but you may have a roof that's like speckled. You have to read whatever the terms are, and you usually can't negotiate about it. Will the attorneys know to ask these questions on a residential transaction? Sometimes, I mean, usually it's not that new. When you have an attorney that's like that somebody got for free. Or, sometimes the police department, they give attorneys, if they're not doing real estate all the time, they may not know to ask. So the more stuff that you're going to give to your attorney, the more documents, the better off your buyers and sellers are going to be. When you have a seller, so will solar installation and uninstallation affect homeowners insurance policy? That's a question for your insurer. You want to find out from your insurance company how they feel about it. We absolutely, whether it's owned or leased, want to add that solar to our homeowners policy. In general, having solar or not having solar is not considered perilous or not. It's just about the value of that materially in the event something should happen to the house. So when you have a seller, you want to get a copy of the contract, same thing. You want to determine who owns the solar, same thing. You want to find out the warranty details, determine what the transfer requirements are, all of these things. But there is a document called the Residential Green Addendum that we'll get into in the longer class. And that may be a giant help to enable us to really, prepare an appraiser or to document for new buyers exactly what that house offers. Again, this is all going to depend on what's in the contract. So basically, if you can't get title insurance, you can't close on the property. The crux to this is that there's usually a UCC filing, right? So this is one, this is a sample. If there's a UCC 1, that UCC filing has to be replaced with a UCC 3. And then when the new buyer takes over the house, that will be put on their house for that buyer as a new UCC 1. Title companies and your attorneys will usually do this. What happens if the buyer doesn't want the solar system at all? The seller, if they're going to sell the buyer that property, is going to have it removed, and it will be an extensive cost, and the seller will still have to pay the 20 years of payments. So if the buyer doesn't want the solar at all, they probably should buy a new house and the seller should sell it to somebody else. And I'm not being rude or obnoxious. It's easier to get divorced than to break a solar contract. I don't think it's funny. It's just like, I can't find words to explain to everyone how powerful those contracts are. Do some sellers perform their own DIY solar setup? Most do not. There is considerable permitting, documentation, and so much more that goes into the procuring of the solar and to be able to install it. And quite frankly, if you are not a roofing expert, you should not be playing with a solar system on a roof. And some slides later are going to show you why. Does outright owning the solar affect the price of the property versus rent or leasing? Absolutely. We're going to get into that in a minute. So this is kind of a big deal, right? So important considerations. Again, every solar contract is different. There's no compliance, there's no licensing, and there is no consumer protection. Now, let me preface this by saying, I believe that going solar is one of the biggest return on investment opportunities that any homeowner can have. You have to do it the right way. A lot of how solar is paid for is done by tax credits. We're going to get into that in a later slide. And for people that don't have a tax appetite, so people that are on disability, that are retired, that aren't paying in, they're not paying in on the W-2 side, sometimes they're not eligible for that. So they consider alternate methods. It's very dependent on the company that you choose and who installs it. This is the basic explanation. So yes, it's better not to lease. It's always better not to lease. Has anybody heard of we're giving free solar? It's free. We're going to put it on your roof for free. A couple years ago, this was a big thing. It was on all of these solar company trucks. They were saying free solar, free solar. There's no free, not in this lifetime, not anywhere in any country around the world. There's nothing that's free. Here's how it goes. Option number 1, you can have the equipment for free, but you're going to pay that solar company for the power every month for the next 20 years or the term of your contract. That's option number one. Option number two is that the electricity is free. You pay for the equipment. So most solar contracts are 20 years. Many solar panels will live and have a warranty for more than 25 years. Usually, when we finance solar to own it, you're going to pay for 15 years, and then for the next 10 years, you have the energy for free. It's warranted for 25. Some solar will live up to 40 years, which is pretty amazing considering it's on the roof in the elements, right? There's expansion and contraction with the heat and cold. Up on the roof, it's hot, it's cold, it snows, it rains. It's really quite an amazing feat to have these panels be able to live for that long. Again, it's going to come down to the installation, but there is no free. There is absolutely no free. You know, I've encountered plenty of stories. Lots of realtors come to me for like, okay, this house has this, what do I do? And there was a couple that the husband wanted the free solar. The wife said, no, 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 it's not free. He insisted it was. He signed the contract. He had a secret checking account. He was making these solar payments, and the wife thought it was free. So when it came time to sell the house, the wife was the one that interviewed the agent and explained to the agent that the solar was free. They don't make any payments. It's free. And they have, you know, a very small minimal electric bill. And that created quite a problem down the pike in the real estate transaction, not only because this solar lease was going to have to be transferred to the buyer, but because the husband had a sneaky checking account. So it could be the other way. The wife could have had a sneaky checking account too. But my point here is that every homeowner does not even know what they signed. Oftentimes, you know, we're seeing that homeowners don't understand they're signing things digitally. So they're so concerned about putting their signature on the documents that they're not reading them. Solar panels. So Thomas is asking, which is better, solar panels or solar tiles? On the roof, there are solar panels that have about 4 or 5 inches between the panel and the roof, and that's created to provide airflow. So anything that makes energy, usually the byproduct is heat. You want that heat to flow with the breeze above the roof and under the panel. So solar panels have a use, and so do roof tiles, right? So whether they're asbestos or anything else, they both serve a definite purpose. When you have a solar panel built into the roofing, they're not serving 2 different purposes. There have been many, many problems with the Tesla roofs that they stopped installing them. They were very expensive. They just, you know, they would have to rip off the old roof, even if it was new. And they were not proven technology. Solar, the panels that we deal with today have been in, you know, out on people's homes for almost 40 years. They're tried and true proven technology. There've been some improvements in terms of the increase in wattage over this period of time, but this technology remains the same. So solar panels all the way, all day long. One thing that most of us are surprised to learn is that when a home inspection is done, those home inspectors disclaim 2 things, meaning they're saying, we don't know about this. Number 1 is usually the roof. So they'll give a visual inspection, but they don't know what's going on underneath. And always the solar panels. Home inspectors do not inspect the solar panels. So there's things that we have to do, whether we represent the buyer or seller, to determine whether that system is actually even operating. This kind of hit me upside the head. Like, what do you mean? So it's buyer beware when we are buying a home or selling a home that has solar on it. There's a couple of pictures that I want to show because this is so important when it comes to installing solar on a home. There are many companies, because there's no compliance, no license, no anything, that decide that they want to become, people want to, electrical contractors, this one, that one, they want to become a solar company. And they're not properly installing the solar. And this is what happens. So those racks that you see, that's what the solar was attached to. And underneath, right, there was a thick layer of ice on the roof, damming under the shingles and solar brackets. So this comes from our friends at Marcor Roofing. They do a lot of solar service. They do a lot of fixing. People have problems with their roofs. They have leaks. They have a variety of situations. And that is because the solar was not properly installed. In this case, it worked, but in some cases, you don't even know that that's the case. Other photos. So raccoons and squirrels, they love that space under the solar and the roof. And if we don't have a pest system or have the system wrapped, these little birds and creatures and squirrels can live under there and make families very happily. And they not only enjoy eating the wires, but they will enjoy eating the roof too. So raccoon damage on a home that had solar installed on a roof that was against code. The homeowner didn't find out that there was damage in her home or a family of raccoons in her home until a heavy rainstorm caused her master walk-in closet ceiling to collapse. So $100,000 in damage to her home. The solar company was lucky that the insurance company stepped up because they would have likely been on the hook since they installed on a roof against local code. You have to know who's installing it. You can't just have, here's the rule of thumb. If a guy knocks on your door to sell you a solar system, would you buy a new kitchen or a new bathroom from the guy that knocked on your door that said, hey, we just sold a kitchen to your neighbors. How about you sign here in finance and we'll put this really great kitchen in? You don't know if they know what they're doing, right? So it goes to the same home improvement strategy as everybody else. If you're going to have any work done in your home, you want to make sure that you have the best. I love having a roofing company installing my solar because I'm sure that everything is done to code. They're used to being on the roof. This is what their expertise is. It's like, having a nurse become a realtor. We don't do that. So it's really very, very similar. This one, 7 homes of the 9 look like this. So what that is water damage. There's water damage in the roof because the roof is leaking after homeowners went solar. This is why it's so important to consider it before you go solar. This is another one. They pulled the solar system. The roof was leaking. Earlier, we talked about the epoxy. So this is how they attached the system. And again, the roof was leaking. So many roofs leak. You have to do your due diligence in finding a really good installer. Let's talk quickly about tax credits, rebates, incentives, and abatements. Sometimes people think that, so when it was LIPA and PSEG Long Island, they had incentives and the incentives went away because people went solar and it became, it was more widely adopted. So there used to be incentives on that side. On the other side, the price used to be here. So now the price has come down. You don't need these incentives anymore for that. There is a 30% federal tax credit on owned solar that you can get. It's a credit, not a deduction. Your accountant or CPA will let you know if you or your clients are eligible. So since it's a credit, if I was a 1099 employee, like I'm an independent contractor, I'm a realtor, and if I owe taxes and there is a tax credit, it will go towards what I owe. I won't get that money back. It goes towards what I owe. If I'm a W-2 employee, my taxes have been taken out all year long, I will get a check when I file my taxes for 30% of the cost of the solar system. So that's a biggie. There is a New York State tax credit of 25% up to $5,000. Most people get the full $5,000, but you don't get any more. There is a rebate in the 5 boroughs. So they get something called NYSERDA. It's dwindling. There's a little bit of money left in that pool, but it's a little bit more expensive in the 5 boroughs. So that kind of evens out. And in the 5 boroughs, they get a 20% property tax abatement, which means that if your solar system was $30,000, they are getting a $6,000 property tax abatement from year 2 to year 5. So it takes them a minute to catch up, but they will divide that $6,000 into 4 credits of $1,500 a year for 4 years, equaling that $6,000 or 20% of the cost of the system. So I have all kinds of information about this. If anybody's interested, I'll show my email address at the end slide and you can send me your questions. But this is an example of tax credits. So let's go through how much does it cost? How do you pay for it? Yes, there are still incentives. This is an example of a new solar contract that I had one of my friends in the solar company send me. So they have a 104% offset. So this solar on an annual basis is going to make 104% of the energy that the homeowner uses, which is awesome. So if they have a little surplus, that's fine. You know, one of the biggest things that use energy in our homes is lighting. So if you've changed your bulbs to LED, wonderful. Don't wait till they die, right? Change all the bulbs out to LED. But sometimes people forget about exterior lighting, which is on all night. You got to change those bulbs too. It will dramatically bring down your electric bill so that this 104% might be 110% of your former usage, and you can get an electric car and not pay for gas. So this is a 15-year financing loan for the solar system at 3.99%. Their estimated payments are $249 a month. So they're expected not to have a utility bill, and they're going to save about $50 a month. So they were paying about $299 or $300 a month before. The whole solar system on this house, so it's a big system, there's 30 solar panels, starts out at $55,000 and change. $5,000 from the state, $16,000, almost $17,000 back from the IRS, from the federal government, when you file your taxes for that taxed year, meaning that the final cost for this solar system is $33,000. Now, while this is kind of a big number, I want you to consider something. If my electric bill is $200 a month, my electric bill over time will go up, right? But let's assume it's never going to change. So $200 a month, let's get the calculator. $200 a month times 12 months is $2,400 a year. If I was going to pay, so the solar system is going to last for 25 years. So $2,400 a year times 25 years is $60,000. I would have paid $60,000 if my electric bill never went up from today. Think about your electric bill 20 years ago. I bet it was way less than it is now. And if we can think about our electric bill 20 years from now in the future, it's safe to presume that our electric bill is going to go up considerably. So this is kind of like locking in what you're paying, but you're only financing it for 15 years. So if this solar is warranted for 25, you're only paying for 15, you're not going to have an electric bill for 10 years. Almost like if somebody would have said, hey, if you pay in advance, or if you make monthly payments and you finance, because that's what these people are doing. They're not coming out with any money out of pocket. If you're making these monthly payments, you're paying less every month. It's the same dollar you paid before. And eventually that payment will disappear. You just have to lock it in. Like, would you have locked in your gas price for 99 cents a gallon 15 years ago? Yes, you would have. We all would have. Another consideration when it comes to the green side is that some of us burn oil, some of us burn natural gas in our homes. For anybody that's got pulmonary issues, kids have asthma, adults have asthma, there's indoor air quality. It's compromised when we have some combustion stuff going on in our house. We have a lot of systems and machines that are moving and, rolling and doing all kinds of things. And if we're using fossil fuel to do that, there's air quality issues. With solar, there is none of that. You're making the energy up on the roof and you're not combusting anything. So let's go to questions. But doesn't that mean you only realize those savings if you are in the house for the next 20 years? Interesting question. So one of the things we didn't get into because we don't have time is the fact that if you own your solar system, it will add The only time a solar system will add value, appraisable value to a home, is if it is owned and there is no UCC filing on the property. The value of the energy. So we talked about paying $2,400 a year for the solar system. I mean, for the electricity. If we're paying a little bit less than that, we're immediately realizing if we're going to stay in the house. If it's appraisable, the appraiser will consider that value of the energy. So it may be $2,400 this year. As the value of the electricity goes up, it may be $2,480 next year. It may be $2,512 the next year. They will add that like rental income. It's the income approach for appraisers. They will add that to the value of the property. If you think about it, you bought this solar system, you bought it, you didn't lease it, you don't have a PPA. If you lease or have a PPA, it is not appraisable. It's considered personal property by Fannie Mae. So if it's increasing the value of your property the minute you put it on, you took the tax credits, you took the savings, it creates more desirability. If you own it and you can include this into the sale price of the property and pay it off in the transaction to sell the house, you're gonna, it's gonna be paid for, and it's gonna increase the value of the property. So when we don't own the solar, that's really where the problems lie. So what happens with the excess of energy production of the solar panels? Do you get paid for the energy? Yes, but there's a caveat. Sorry, I have to take a drink. Hold on. It is always better to use the excess energy, and that's a great position to be in. However, the utility pays us what's called the wholesale rate. So if you look at your electric bill, and it will make you a little nauseous, and I apologize in advance, but if you look at your electric bill, you will see that you're being charged X amount of cents per kilowatt hour. It's usually like 6, 9, whatever. Then it's a delivery charge and a this charge, and a this charge usually comes down to about 21 cents a kilowatt hour, or as we referred to, an ounce. When they pay you back, they don't pay you for the delivery charge or the taxes or the surcharges. They're only giving you that 6 or 9 cents a kilowatt hour for, when they pay you back and they write you that check or they deposit that amount into your account as a credit. How can we, in the end, can we get a link to today's webinar? I'm going to leave that up to LIBOR. I'm happy to send it to them, or I'm happy to have you shoot me an email, and I'm happy to send you a copy. And I'm hoping to do a full class sometime in the future. It's usually 3.5 hours. Lots of fun, but a lot of information I didn't have time to get into today.
We'll be posting a link of this on lirealtor.com.
Beautiful.
Later this week, probably at some point. But yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. That's all I've got. I mean, does anybody have questions? Everybody wants a link. You're welcome.
I'm going to post in the chat right now where they can find that once it's posted.
Perfect.
All right. If no one else has any questions, let's see. Oh, we have a couple coming in on the Q&A.
So will we ever be 100% off of the grid? Well, I wouldn't recommend it if you didn't have to, and here's the reason. So sometimes people say, well, what if we go 3 months without sun? Well, we'll all die, right? So that's a bad thing. We need the sun. It grows. It's our whole entire ecosystem works like that. If you were in the middle of nowhere and, you just had solar panels and batteries, you could live like that for a little while, but it's not, you really have to, it's a lot of work. So we really do want to stay connected to that grid. If we were to buy a battery and go back and forth with the energy in the battery, which we will all evolve to eventually, the energy, the way that our energy system used to work was that here we all with our houses, right? So imagine, here's my cup and all of our houses are around it, and this is the utility. And the utility is giving out energy to all of the people in all of the houses. What's happening now is called distributed energy, where all of these houses have solar on them. And they're making power, they're using what they can use, and they're sending it back, and they're sharing it, they're distributing it. So there's all these rooftops. So if we're all making our own power and sharing it with the utility, the whole coal burning thing and the whole, the idea of using fossil fuels goes out of being valid because we don't need it. So with the amount of rooftops that we have residentially and commercially, we can absolutely offset our entire electrical cost, but right now we don't, and we really want to stay connected to the grid. You're all welcome. Thank you for joining us today. It was my honor to speak with you.
All right. Thanks, Christina. That was a great presentation. And like I said, everyone, you can find the recording of this on lirealtor.com later this week. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.